Hello, my name is Drew Borders, and I'm here for WCAT with the Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who is the Assistant Secretary of State of African Affairs. Welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
I am absolutely delighted to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. So, our first couple of questions are currently, there are many Westminster alums working in the Foreign Service. So, I was just wondering, what advice do you have for them?
Well, thank you. One of them is traveling with me today, and the best advice that I can give any person working in the State Department is get out and let people know how much fun you are having working in the State Department. Help us recruit. The best recruiters we have are our employees, and the best recruiting they can do is at their alma mater. So I encourage all of our employees to go out to recruit, and that's the same message that I give to your graduates as well.
Thank you. Can you explain what you do in a normal day?
I don't have normal days. Here's how my day starts. I wake up at 5 a.m. To the sound of my BlackBerry, and I pick it up and I log on and I read emails in bed in the dark from 5 to 5:30, and then I get up and I get dressed, and usually I take phone calls because most of my countries and the people who work for me are 5 hours or more ahead of Washington time, so they've already started their workday at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I can take phone calls from about 6 to 6:30. Sometimes I make phone calls to African leaders or to foreign ministers at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I do those phone calls, and then I have breakfast, and I get in my car at exactly 7 o'clock on the dot to go into the office. I have a regular meeting that starts at 7:45. It's a briefing that gives me heads up on crises or other situations that are taking place on the African continent. And then I start the day filled with meetings. And my hope is that as I go through the day, I have at least 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon for reading time, and occasionally get a lunch in between. We are dealing with issues such as what is happening now in Burundi in Central Africa, where the president decided against the wishes of his people and against the wishes of many others in the continent to run for a third term. And his decision led to a serious crisis in the country and a lot of violence. And so for the past weekend, we have been making phone calls across the continent to encourage other leaders in Africa to be in touch with the leaders of Burundi to tell them to do everything possible to avoid the violence.
And also, how do you work through problem solving an issue like that? It must be a little difficult, but do you have like certain steps or a protocol or anything like that?
There's no protocol for dealing with a crisis, but I do know that it's important to do consultation, to talk to people, to seek advice, and to get others to take leadership. So it's not always the U.S. government that needs to solve the problem, but sometimes we need to galvanize others to be involved in the problem. So again, these phone calls to other African leaders is to galvanize them to take ownership of the problem and solve the problem.
May I ask if you have any specific like experience or a story that might relate or be really well to tell the viewers?
Oh, I have so many stories. I guess the story that most people like to hear, and it's a story that I didn't talk about a lot for a number of years, but I was in Rwanda during the genocide in 1994. I'm sure most of your viewers were not born then. And it was a life changing experience. It was an experience that really opened my eyes to, to my own mortality. Fortunately, I survived, but I came out of it a changed person. And I live every day to make sure that I do something good to help people.
Um, People in the U.S. kind of have a tendency to group all of the countries in Africa together, and sometimes even just calling it one country. But can you tell us some of the nuances and differences throughout the continent?
Well, first of all, the continent is a continent. It's not a country. And there are 54 countries on the continent of Africa, and every single one of them is different. We divide Africa up between sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa, so the responsibilities of my office are only sub-Saharan Africa. I don't have responsibility for the 5 countries in North Africa: Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Those are in our Bureau for Near East Asia, the Middle East Bureau. And they're different languages, they're different people, they're different histories. There are the Francophone African countries where their experience was with the French, so their language is French. There are the Anglophone countries where the major language is English. There's Liberia, where I served as ambassador, and Liberia is different because Liberia was not colonized, but it is very closely related to the United States. There's Ethiopia that was never colonized and fought for its independence against the Italians and won. So all of the countries are different. There are countries on the coast. There are countries that are internal and have no coast. And all of that impacts how the country behaves and what the priorities of those countries are.
From your experience, what advice could you give Westminster students on how to manage groups and work together?
The important thing when you're working in a group is to understand that it is a group, that you are working on a team, and that for a team to succeed, every member of the team has a role to play, and every member of the team is important. And there's an important role for leadership in the team, but leaders need to know that they also are only one part of the team, that they can't manage the team, they can't micromanage the team. And the important thing is to be to communicate and to listen to team members.
Thank you. So I do know that Philip Diamond, who's the son of our assistant headmaster, is actually working for you, or your administrative assistant. How much help is he, and what kind of things do you have him do for you?
We're on tape, so I'm not going to tell the truth. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. Phil actually is not my administrative assistant. Phil is a Foreign Service officer, and I know that one day Phil Diamond is going to be an ambassador, so you'll interview him one day as Ambassador Diamond. I don't know where he'll be ambassador to, because that's the career path for a Foreign Service officer, and if you're really good, all Foreign Service officers don't become ambassadors, but if you're really good, you will become an ambassador. And I think that Phil, having graduated from this school, bringing the experience that he had here, his immense learning, will be a successful Foreign Service officer and eventually make it into the ranks of an ambassador.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a great interview, and it's really been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, and I am really delighted to be here.
I'm Drew, and this is WCAT.